The scent of lilies and dread filled the air. I stood at the entrance to the ballroom, my own reception, and my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't the sea of familiar faces that made my heart hammer against my ribs. It was the banner. A massive, glittering monstrosity in silver and gold screamed, "Happy 10th Anniversary, Chloe and David." It hung next to the tasteful, calligraphed sign I had ordered. My sign, the one that was supposed to welcome guests to my wedding. I froze. Mark squeezed my hand, his knuckles turning white. "What is that?" he whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. I had no answer. I just stared, a cold wave washing over the months of planning, the late-night calls, the meticulous spreadsheets. All of it felt like a joke. My mother bustled over, her smile stretched painfully tight. "There you are. Isn't it wonderful? A double celebration." She fussed with the corsage on my wrist, deliberately avoiding my eyes. A double celebration. That's what she called this hijacking. Guests were starting to notice. I saw them picking up the programs from their chairs. My cousin Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. I knew why. I'd sent her the original draft. This new version had my wedding schedule on one side and a detailed itinerary for my older sister Chloe's anniversary party on the other. Whispers started to ripple through the room. Our first dance was a nightmare. The song Mark and I had chosen, the one we'd practiced to in our tiny living room until our feet ached, faded out abruptly. The music just stopped. The silence was deafening. The DJ, a man I'd never seen before, grabbed the mic. And now, a special anniversary dance for Chloe and David. My sister, beaming, pulled her husband onto the floor. I stood there, rooted to the spot in my ivory dress, as the crowd applauded for them. They were celebrating a memory, while my new beginning was being trampled underfoot, erased. The final insult came during the cake cutting. 2 cakes stood side by side. My elegant, 3-tiered creation, and Chloe's colossal, gaudy masterpiece shaped like the number 10. My father, beaming with pride, handed my sister the knife first. "For the happy couple," he boomed. Everyone cheered. He approached me later while I was trying to smile through gritted teeth for a photo. His smile was gone. He pushed a thick folder from the venue into my hands. "Here," he said, his voice low and firm. "Your half of the bill. It's due Monday." His voice cut through the noise. My half. I opened it. My fingers trembled. The total at the bottom was $63,450. It was the full amount. The entire bill for 2 parties. The bill they had promised to split. The bill that now had only my name on it. I looked up at him, my vision blurring. He just stared back, his expression unyielding. He expected me to swallow this. To pay for my own humiliation. My career presentation, the one that could change my life, was in 3 days. My focus shattered. I couldn't even think. He turned his back and walked away, leaving me alone in the crowd. The folder felt like a slab of stone in my hands. It started subtly, as it always did. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my parents' kitchen. The table was covered in fabric swatches and cake flavor samples. My planning binder was open, a thick book filled with a year of saving and dreaming. For a moment, it felt real. It felt like they were on my side. "It's just such a shame," my mother began, stirring her tea without looking at me. "Chloe's 10th anniversary is the very same weekend. She's so down about it. No money for a big party, you know." I knew. Chloe's financial dramas were a constant storm I was always expected to help navigate. A week later, a text message lit up my phone. It was from Mom. "Honey, what if we just had a small toast for Chloe at the reception? It would mean the world to her. A single toast. What harm could it do?" I was trying to be the good daughter, the accommodating one. But the single toast became a dedicated table. The table became a special menu item. The menu item became its own DJ request list. Every time I tried to pump the brakes, to gently reclaim my own wedding, I hit a brick wall. I remember my father's voice on the phone, sharp and cold. "Don't be so selfish," he'd snapped. Your sister looks up to you. Family helps family. That was the line they always used. The one that really meant, you give, and she takes. It was the reason I paid for my own college while they funded Chloe's 3 failed business ventures. It was why I was the emergency contact, the designated driver, the reliable one. I was so tired of being reliable. The present crashed back in. That $63,000 bill sat on my passenger seat, a silent, mocking passenger on my drive home. It was more than my annual salary. Mark and I had drained our savings for the deposit, which I now realized had covered the entire event. My parents and Chloe hadn't paid a single dime. I walked into my apartment and the silence felt wrong, heavier than usual. A letter was taped to my door. The bold red letters screamed past due. My hands shook as I tore it open. It was a formal notice from my landlord. My roommate, Jessica, hadn't paid her half of the rent for 2 months. She had packed her things and vanished while I was at my own rehearsal dinner. The notice was clear. I was now liable for the full amount plus late fees or we'd face eviction. I sank to the floor, the eviction notice in one hand and the wedding invoice in the other. It wasn't just a bill anymore. It was a crushing weight from all sides, threatening to pull me under. I was completely and utterly trapped. The next morning, I walked back into the venue. The air, once filled with the scent of flowers, now smelled sterile, like corporate defeat. My hands were shaking as I clutched the invoice. Mark stood beside me, a silent, solid presence in the cold conference room. My parents were already there. My father sat with his arms crossed, a thunderous look on his face. My mother just stared at a spot on the polished table, refusing to look at me. "There has been a mistake," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "This bill includes thousands of dollars in anniversary-specific charges. The ice luge, the premium bar, the DJ. We never approved those." The venue coordinator, a tired-looking woman named Maria, slid a thick document across the table without a word. It was the contract. "Everything was approved," she said flatly. The addendums were signed. She tapped a finger on a signature at the bottom of a page titled, Anniversary Celebration Package. It was my father's looping, arrogant script. I remembered a voicemail from months ago, his voice dismissive. "I handled the paperwork, don't worry about it." This is what he handled. "I signed it to help you out," he boomed, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed in the silent room. "We agreed to merge the events to save money. We agreed to a toast." I shot back, my voice finally cracking with anger. "Not a second, more expensive party that you stuck me with the bill for." "You're being ungrateful," my mother whispered, her eyes finally finding mine. They were filled with a chilling disappointment. "After everything we did to make your day special." My chest tightened. They were twisting it. They were actually twisting this, painting me as the villain of my own story. Maria watched the exchange, her expression unreadable. She cleared her throat, and the sound was like a judge's gavel. "The contract is clear," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "The primary signatories are responsible for all charges approved under their account. The final payment is due." My father stood up, smug. He had won. "This is ridiculous. We are not paying for her hysterics." He looked down at me, his eyes cold. "You're an adult. Handle your responsibilities." They walked out, just like that, leaving me and Mark sitting in the wreckage. As we were leaving, my legs feeling like lead, a quiet voice called my name. It was Maria. She stopped me by the door, glancing down the empty hall. "Listen," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father strong-armed those changes. But your sister was the one in here authorizing the specific upgrades. I have the detailed charge logs." She pressed a small, crisp business card into my hand. Her touch was electric. "The liability clause on page 14 is very specific," she continued, her eyes locking with mine. "Your father holds the liability as the primary signatory, but the authorizing party for each line item is also documented. Call me. Off the record." The next blow wasn't financial. It was social, and it was a masterpiece of cruelty, delivered by my own mother. It came in the form of an email, sent to every aunt, uncle, and cousin in our extended family. The subject line was sickly sweet, so much to be thankful for. My heart sank as I read it. She went on for paragraphs about the beautiful, blended celebration, praising Chloe's enduring marriage and the joy of seeing family come together. She thanked Mark and me for being so wonderfully generous and flexible in sharing our special day. Then came the kill shot. A single paragraph aimed directly at me. "It's been so hard to see our youngest struggling with the stress of it all," she wrote. "But we know her big heart will see the wisdom in putting family harmony first. We are all praying for her." My phone lit up instantly. The poison had worked. Text after text rolled in from relatives who had no idea what was really happening. "Just let it go, sweetie. It was a lovely party. Your mom is right. Family is more important than money. You don't want to start your marriage this way." They had painted me as unstable, petty, and ungrateful. They had won the narrative, and they'd done it in less than an hour. Mark, seeing the look on my face, grabbed his phone. He was furious. He called my father, trying one last time to be the voice of reason. He was calm, logical. He laid out the finances, the broken promises, the blatant unfairness. I could hear my father's voice, muffled, but booming through the speaker. "You're new to this family, son. Learn your place." Then, the click of him hanging up. Mark looked at me, his face grim. "That's it," he said. "We're done trying to reason with them." A profound sense of isolation washed over me. No one was on our side. The vendor invoices started arriving in the mail. A daily barrage of paper cuts, each one addressed only to me. That night, unable to sleep, I was on my laptop, desperately researching eviction laws for my roommate situation. I was reading about liability, proof of residence, and the critical importance of a paper trail. And then it hit me. A spark in the darkness. I wasn't just looking at tenant law. I was looking at a playbook. Contracts. Signatures. Paper trails. Maria's words came echoing back to me. "I have the detailed charge logs." My family was fighting a war of emotion and social pressure. I was about to start fighting a war of evidence. The next 48 hours were a blur of quiet, focused activity. The shame and hurt were still there, but I packed them away in a cold, dark corner of my mind. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford. The venue had given me a final deadline. Pay up or prepare for a fight. I chose to fight. First, I walked into the most important presentation of my career. I channeled all my frustration, all my righteous anger, into a laser-focused energy, and I delivered the pitch of my life. My boss was stunned. The clients were thrilled. As I walked out of that boardroom, I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt in years. It was mine. I had earned it. That confidence fueled everything else. That afternoon, I met Maria in a coffee shop on the other side of town. She slid a thick manila envelope across the table, looking over her shoulder as she did. "I'm not supposed to do this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I've seen families like yours before. It's not right." Inside was the gold mine. The complete, itemized ledger of every single charge. Page after page of upgrades, all time-stamped. Premium champagne fountain, $2,500, authorized by C. Miller. Live anniversary band, 9 p.m. 12 a.m., $7,000, authorized by C. Miller. Custom ice luge with C&D monogram, $1,200, authorized by C. Miller. My sister's signature was on digital authorizations for over $40,000 of the bill. It was all there, in black and white. Next, I called the DJ. I explained the situation calmly, factually. He was hesitant at first, but when I mentioned my sister had told him the bride approved all the costs, his tone changed. "She told me she was the wedding planner," he said, his voice tight with anger. He agreed immediately to sign a notarized affidavit, confirming his contract, and all his instructions came directly from Chloe. Meanwhile, Mark was handling the final piece of our plan. He found an opening at the city registrar's office for Friday morning. It was the same day my parents had demanded a final showdown meeting at the venue. The one where they planned to have their lawyer intimidate me into signing a payment plan. That evening, Mark and I sat at our kitchen table. The eviction notice was still on the fridge, but it seemed smaller now. In front of us were the ledger, the affidavit, and 2 simple, perfect gold wedding bands we had bought that afternoon. We didn't have a lavish reception or a 5-tier cake. We had something better. We had a plan. Mark looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. I took a deep breath and slid the ledger into a crisp new folder. "They wanted a show," I said, a cold resolve settling over me. "Let's give them one." We were back in the same cold conference room at the venue. This time, my parents had brought their lawyer, a smug-looking man in a pinstripe suit who couldn't be bothered to make eye contact with me. My sister Chloe and her husband were there too, arranged on one side of the table like a jury. They were radiating self-pity. Maria, the venue manager, stood by the wall, her face a perfect mask of professional neutrality. My father started, his voice booming with false authority as he addressed their lawyer. "We are here to resolve this unfortunate family matter. My daughter has had some emotional difficulty accepting her financial obligations." The lawyer nodded, shuffling his papers, preparing to launch into a speech about contracts and consequences. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I was there to cry and beg. I held up my hand. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the air, cool and clear, "I have a brief presentation." A flicker of confusion crossed my father's face. The lawyer stopped shuffling. I took a small portable projector from my bag and set it on the table. The room went silent, the only sound the quiet click as I connected it to my laptop. The first image filled the wall. It was the $63,450 invoice. "You're correct," I said, looking directly at my father, holding his gaze until he looked away. "There is a bill. But you misspoke at the reception. You said this was my half. It is, in fact, the full bill for both events." My father started to speak, a protest already forming on his lips, but I was already clicking to the next slide. "This is the venue's internal ledger, which I'm sure Maria can verify." From the corner of my eye, I saw Maria give a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "It details every single charge." "Let's look at a few, shall we?" I zoomed in. A line item for the champagne fountain appeared, with Chloe's digital signature glowing next to it. Click. The anniversary band. Chloe's signature. Click. The ice luge. Chloe's signature. Click. 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 For 2 solid minutes, I showed over 20 separate charges, totaling $41,800, all personally authorized by my sister. Chloe's face went from pale to ghostly white. She sank back in her chair, staring at her own name on the screen like it was a ghost. "As you can see," I continued, my voice perfectly even, a second, distinct, "event was planned and authorized without my consent or knowledge. These charges have nothing to do with my wedding." My father's lawyer cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Be that as it may, your father co-signed the master agreement. He is a guarantor, but the event was in your name. You are the primary debtor." He smiled, thinking he'd found his winning argument. "I'm so glad you brought up the contract," I said, clicking to the next slide. The screen went black for a beat. The silence was absolute. Then, a new image appeared. It was a beautiful, high-resolution photo. Me and Mark. We were standing on the steps of the city registrar's office, beaming, our faces lit by the morning sun. I was holding up our official marriage certificate to the camera. The city's seal was clearly visible, and in the bottom corner of the photo, the digital timestamp was sharp and undeniable. Friday, 10:17 a.m. I let the image hang in the air for a moment before I spoke. "Mark and I were married on Friday morning," I announced to the silent room. "We had a quiet, lovely, and fully paid-for ceremony, which means the event you all attended here on Saturday night wasn't our wedding. It was simply a reception party." I turned my gaze from the screen to my family. My father, my mother, my sister. Their faces were a collage of disbelief and horror. "And since you planned it, you authorized all the upgrades, and you invited all the guests to your double celebration. It was your party. So this, I said, picking up the heavy invoice from the table and placing it gently in front of my father, is your bill. As the hosts, I disconnected my projector and packed it away. The silence was a living thing, thick and suffocating. The lawyer was staring, his mouth slightly open. My father's face was a mottled shade of red. Mark stood up and pulled my chair out for me. I stood, smoothed down my dress, and together we walked towards the door. We didn't run. We didn't look back. We just walked out, leaving them in the ruins of their own making. We never spoke to them again. I heard bits and pieces, though, through the one cousin who took my side. I heard my father had to take out a second mortgage on his house to pay the venue and all the vendors who, of course, had ironclad proof of every single authorization. I heard my sister and her husband aren't speaking to my parents, blaming them for the public humiliation and the financial ruin. Their perfect family image, the one they sacrificed me for, was shattered by a single spreadsheet. There's a certain poetic justice in that. It's been 6 months now. The promotion I got after my presentation came with a significant raise. Mark and I used it to break our lease, pay the outstanding fees, and move into a new apartment across town. It's smaller than our old place, but the silence here is peaceful. It's ours. On our mantelpiece, there's only one photo from our wedding. It's the one of us on the steps of the courthouse, squinting in the bright morning sun, holding up our marriage certificate. It's my favorite. Last night, we had dinner with 2 of Mark's friends and my cousin. It was our real wedding reception. We had takeout pizza and cheap champagne and laughed until our sides hurt. There were no banners, no ice luges, no drama. There was just warmth and respect and a quiet, simple joy. For years, I fought to be seen by people who refused to look at me. I thought that chaotic, expensive party was the most important day of my life. I was wrong. The most important day of my life was the one after, when I decided to stop asking for their approval and to start building a life that didn't require it. It was the day I finally chose myself. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your own family? Let me know your story in the comments below. It helps to know you're not alone.